And hello, it is Integrating Real Perspective back again with my latest film review for the next Will Smith movie in this filmography podcast. And this movie, I guarantee you, after rewatching it again, is my number one favorite Will Smith movie of all time. No compromises here. This is After Earth from 2013. Boy, oh boy. Oh, After Earth. Man. Oh, with absolute confidence, this is definitely Will Smith's crowning achievement. I am really honestly all too proud to be reviewing this one as my next review in his filmography. Basically, if I were to provide an IMDb tagline that sums up this film, it would be this. Father and son are stranded on a Class 1 quarantined planet after their ship crash lands due to an asteroid storm. What we see on the screen is what it's like if you get Aguirre, the Wrath of God, crossbred with the DNA of a more down-to-earth version of Avatar. Yeah. So After Earth is a movie that is very, very rich in imagery and atmosphere. And the film is only 100 minutes long. The first 20 of those minutes take place on Nova Prime. And goes into the background regarding the remaining human survivors of Earth who are starting again in another solar system. So, famine, floods, the way that humans have abused the environment has now caused Mother Earth to evict us, as Jaden Smith narrates at the beginning of the film. So we see the story of Nova Prime and the Ranger Corps, which is led by Cypher Prime. That's Will Smith's character in this movie, who have been fighting these aliens that are known as Ursas and have worked very hard to establish peace on this planet. So that's the first 20 minutes. And during that time, a there is an interstellar trip on a spaceship in which Will Smith and Jaden Smith, yeah, his real life son, uh, stars in this movie, are on a mission to deliver an Ursa to another planet. And this and then what happens is that they encounter an asteroid storm, which Will Smith and his crew try to escape through a warp drive. And yet, regardless of that, they've sustained such heavy damages that they have to land on this Class 1 quarantine planet. And that's where the rest of this movie unfolds. The remaining three quarters of this movie is essentially a survival story in which the ship crash lands on what you realize soon after as Earth, or Earth that once was. I just made a Firefly reference right there, or Serenity reference. So, yeah, it's a post-apocalyptic Earth, and it's a pretty hostile Earth, to say the least. Like all of the usual creatures that you see that are a natural part of the animal kingdom have evolved to kill anything that's not part of its um, ecosystem. So that's what you get when you watch this movie. Yeah. Um, so the rest of the movie is basically Kitai, um, okay, so obviously I'm going to have to get into the main characters here. So again, Will Smith is Cypher Rage. He is the top general for the Master Corps who has mastered the art of ghosting. So ghosting is a technique that is used in battle against these evil predatory aliens that are known as Ursas. So basically, an Ursa kills its prey by sensing its fear. The concept and the neuroscience behind fear is a subject that is explored in this movie. And it's explored quite fascinating, in quite a fascinating way. The sticking point of fascination for me as the tagline caption during the advertising of this movie was the line, danger is real, fear is a choice. So essentially, that tagline right there is what starts to play out after the ship crash lands. Now there's the other main character in the story, and that's Kitai. And as I had said before, this movie features both Will and his son Jaden playing playing a father and son in this movie. So their familial dynamics through the film are what fuel the story and give it the forward momentum. The authenticity of Will and Jaden's real life father son relationship is what they draw on as the material to create their characters in this film. I honestly just love the chemistry that these two characters have on screen together. And the creativity honestly in this film is just phenomenal, especially after it takes off once they land on the post-apocalyptic Earth, and the mission is basically that with the two halves of the ship, the front and the back half, having split off after the ship, as the ship enter the atmosphere, what happens is that Cypher is wounded in such a way that it makes him completely incapacitated to move. Both his legs are broken. So, aside from that little snippet in the beginning of the film where you see him in a flashback scene where he's part of this war where he is fighting off the Ursas, that's it. The story actually takes off as Cypher is going into retirement. So based on that, it can be said that that was the intention for keeping Will out of action for the remainder of the movie, and instead putting Katai into all these extreme life and death survival situations because he himself has been going through training to become a Ranger Corps as well. Honestly, the set designs and cinematography are very lush and beautiful to look at. And though Nova Prime is nice to look at itself, it's the alien terrain of planet Earth in its class 1 quarantine state that really catches my eye. It would catch your eye too when you watch the film. The agriculture looks pretty natural, but the animal life on the planet seems like something out of a pulp fantasy novel. Most surprisingly of all, though, is the whole movie is based on a story by Will Smith himself, though the film is directed, as well as the screenplay itself being written by, ta-da, M. Night Shyamalan. Oh man, M. Night Shyamalan. What a creative visionary that I have a lot of love for. My goodness. Okay, so you know how I've said that I own over a dozen of Will's movies? I also own over half a dozen of M. Night Shyamalan's films as well. Another childhood hero who has a bunch of masterworks that I worship at the altar. Lady in the Water was especially a favorite of mine for the longest time. His usual hypnotic, water-like momentum that is a staple in his movies was at its zenith with that film, especially with the children's fairy tale genre that he had tapped into back in 2006. I think I saw that film on the big screen too when it came to theaters. Shyamalan's movies have almost a gravity of their own when you sit down and watch one. You feel like your astral body is floating a foot above your head, and you enter into this void where you are swimming or flying through space. This space of each frame being like an aquarium. The aesthetic of each frame is very wavy, yet also anchored so that you feel relaxed. It's like an out of body experience. I knew that right away, even as early on as Unbreakable. Just watching that movie too. This way, this is when the suspenseful scare moments happen. They actually feel rewarded, like with Signs, when you finally get to see the alien after it had been just primarily in the background the whole time, but it was always there, lurking in your subconscious. Even if it wasn't physically present, it's like your felt sense could pick up on it. Hypnagogic is actually the best word for describing his work. That's why I will always feel inspired and enchanted when watching any of his films, and I will defend him. I will defend him for any criticisms that are thrown at him. Okay, his filmography is not perfect. I will admit. Um, I mean, yeah, Last Airbender I didn't really care for. Obviously, that movie sucked. I couldn't even finish that movie. Um, Old was a pretty weird one too. Yeah, I'm not even going to think about that one right now. But now, After Earth has become yet another exciting spectacle, except that it's on a much bigger budget than many of his films, and it's not shot in Philadelphia. Oh, yeah. Yeah, as you know, M. Night Shyamalan has always had a reputation for filming his work in his hometown. It's kind of like Lars von Trier that way. The film was shot, After Earth was shot in Costa Rica, Eureka, California, and Moab, Utah. And you'll notice it if you watch the bonus features on the DVD. Um, this film was intended to launch a franchise which would have likely resulted in a few sequels and a TV show. Unfortunately, Will Smith himself has actually gone on record as saying that this movie was the most painful failure in his career. Okay, so this isn't the first time I've ever heard a creator or co-creator hate his own project. An example from the music world is Rick Wakeman from Yes, hating his keyboard contributions to Tales from Topographic Oceans, saying something to the same degree of it being the most embarrassing part of his career. Uh, I think he was like using a reference to like a woman's padded bra or something, but there too, like I feel like I live in an alternate universe where the motto is one man's treasure is another person's trash. For me, I saw After Earth from the one angle that most people decided to ignore. But such is the case with living in an upside down world where only personal reflection matters, as above, so below. The way I see it, a great artist, once in a lifetime, will have a moment where he questions that one project and how he thought he was crazy to have even bothered making it in the first place. But I see that as simply caring too much about what the masses want and not enough about what you want. Will Smith is a pretty humble guy too, from what I've seen and read about him. So him hating on After Earth just encourages me to give him a pat on the shoulder to acknowledge you actually have something magical going on here. Don't give up. And at the same time, because the movie failed at the box office, the film ended up becoming just a mere fragment of what could have developed into a larger story. I obviously wanted to see more exploration of Nova Prime and see Will Smith going into more battles with the Ursas. So at the very least, a prequel would have sufficed, since After Earth focuses on Will's retire on Cypher's retirement from the Ranger Corps. The only possible hinting at an After Earth franchise, if you go on the DVD bonus features, there is the XPrize challenge, which is highlighted where 100, hundreds of contestants submitted their ideas for building a more habitable Earth on Nova Prime. And Team Starling was the winner that was presented the award. They had there were these two girls that made up Team Starling, and they created these really interesting Lego models of space buggies and planetary factories that produce renewable green energy. Gosh, just imagine how those models would have been the foundation for an After Earth prequel, or even at least like a Netflix series. See, I think Will's reputation carries such a heavy gravity to it because of his past glories that his fan base has shaped him to be a particular persona. So, Will's devotion through the approval of his fans is what conditioned him to believe that After Earth was a failure. People wanted to see more of the Fresh Prince Will, or the I Am Legend Will, or the Independence Day Will. And that's just sad to see such rigid expectations from such fans. As for all the flack that Jaden was getting, um, I don't buy it. Will defines this as the reason for why the film was the most painful failure of his career, and that he put his own son through hell. I still don't buy it. Not when I see the BTS features of the two working on the set. The scenes where I watch them bond together on set are so candid. There is, in fact, a little interview blurb where Jaden says that his character Katai doesn't know what the redwoods look like. So, in his words, he should just be just throw me onto the set without any prior rehearsal or warm up. This should just be like method acting. Just throw me into the redwoods without any script to read. And his dad loves the idea so much that he ends up calling him Jaden Seymour Hoffman and proceeds to cheer his son on. Honestly, I could tell they were both getting genuine laughs from that moment. But yeah, so um yeah, there's really not too much more I can say about After Earth, except that it's a movie that is quite I would say the film is a mood piece, watching it from start to finish. Like you watch both Cypher and Katai like communicating with each other, Cypher is on the ship tending to his broken legs, and Katai is out with his care package, like his medical kits and his optic camera and the cutlass, that weapon that he brings along to protect him. And he's just feral the whole time, because he's on what looks like an alien planet, but this is a planet that he could have been born on 1,000 years ago, before everything went to hell as far as the ecosystem goes. And so this isn't really just a story about um, a father and son trying to get off that planet. It's really about understanding the underlying dynamics of their relationship. There's another character that I forgot to bring up, and that's Zoe Kravitz's character, Sensei, who is Kitai's older sister and, Cypher's daughter. We see a bunch of flashbacks throughout the movie where we see her murdered by one of these Ursa. And she's had to protect Katai by putting him in this glass bubble. So he survived, but Sensei did not. And that particular trauma comes to a head during the scene where Katai is at this peak, and he reaches a sort of a roadblock. He doesn't know if he should keep going on foot or if he should try his wing wing device, his wing ship device, whatever that is. That it's part of his suit. His life suit that he wears has wings built into it. And his father is calculating the chances of survival because he has to also use these little air canisters because human beings can't breathe the Earth's atmosphere at that point in history, which, by the way, takes place in 3018, believe it or not. Because the film starts out in 2018, showing a whole bunch of a montage of news flashes about which basically anticipated the end of the world, and then the film flash forwards 1,000 years into the future. So yeah, it's 3018. So, anyways, getting back to the conflict between Katai and Cypher. So Katai is calling his dad a coward because his dad wasn't there to help Sensei. And, um, you know, obviously, Cypher isn't really a man of good judgment. It's like he knew the risks in making that warp jump through the asteroid storm. He knew the risks of landing on that class 1 quarantine planet too. And yet it's like you don't know whether he's expecting the best or the worst case scenario. When he warns Katai about the Ursa that broke loose, that was the cargo on that ship, he's telling him that the fact that the Ursa may have survived is the third and least likely chance. But he says, we should anticipate the worst case scenario. So, um, and as it turns out, obviously Katai starts to internalize his training as a Ranger Corps, and he finally actually manages to um, get away. He manages to use his the wings on his suit to swoop down into the valley, and Um, yeah, so then, well, then of course, he gets captured by an eagle too. In fact, it's at this point that things get really, really exciting, and the dynamic of the film really starts to hit a new emotional high. It's at that point when Katai skydives off the cliff and has an eagle chasing him down. Now, he tries to escape, but the eagle eventually does capture him. And then he has to escape from the nest where a bunch of tigers are trying to come in and kill all the starlings. And now at this point, both Katai and his dad are completely cut off. Uh, his communication device is broken, which means that his father can no longer speak to him. But Katai eventually restores his visual tracker so that his dad can at least see him, that he can be his eyes, even if he can't necessarily be his conscience. Um, and so that's when Katai has to rely on the wisdom that his father gave him, like, how throughout the movie Katai, so Cypher would always tell Katai to take a knee every time he gets into fight flight mode. And then he instructs him to follow this meditation. Root yourself in this present moment. Sight, sound, smell. How do you feel? Ugh, that line just sticks with me every time. It just impacts my solar plexus profoundly. Very visceral. If Will Smith wrote that, I don't know if that was him or if that was M. Night Shyamalan's idea, but that is one of the most meme-worthy lines in that whole movie. And many a yoga teacher or meditation guru would do well to quote that line from that film because Will Smith was really, really, striking a message home with that line. And I don't know if that has anything to do with his excursions into Scientology, but it is a very, very spiritually powerful line in itself as a way of just, understanding how to root the spirit within the body. And it is a mantra that finally helps Katai when he's up against the Ursa at the climax of this movie. So he reaches the top of a volcano, which is where his Ranger Corps training is finally tested, and he ends up winning. And since he reached the other half of the shipwreckage by this point, he's able to secure a rescue ship by cutting through the electromagnetic static, setting a signal up through the planet's atmosphere, and then a ship finally comes to save the two. And then it's like at the end, they finally bond and they agree that they want to go work for that they want to go work for their mom and wife. I mean, Katai says he wants to go work with mom, and Cypher's like, me too, which of course I can't blame him for, considering now he's completely unable to walk, seeing that he's got two broken legs. This movie was just very emotionally involving for me to watch. I just really, really I saw this incredible emotional journey between both the two leads in the film. Seeing, how they had to work through their conflicts together that they had while living back at home on Nova Prime. And then basically learn, over time, peeling off all the layers to get to understand the core essence of what brings them together as father and son, and how they can develop a deeper love for each other as a result of that. Because, it's like at the beginning of the movie, Cypher is really, really hard on his son. When they're at the dinner table, for example, he's, Katai is telling him that he didn't pass his Ranger Corps test, and, um, Cypher's like, where do we look when we're talking, or when we're speaking? And, because Katai's not making eye contact with his dad, Katai then wants to leave the table, and Cypher is like, denied, sit down. Which I know that's nothing to laugh at, but when I first saw the movie, I just couldn't help but think, oh boy, boy, this is a relationship that's getting off to a very, very sore start. Like, ooh, that has gotta hurt. But then, when they crash on Earth later on, or very, very early on in the movie, then it's like, well, now Cypher is completely incapacitated, and him having to stay behind on the ship while his son, who is probably no more, well, I know that Jaden Smith was 14, 15 years old at the time of this movie. So on the fringe, of that initiation from childhood to manhood, from being a kid to being an adult. So um, it's kind of like this was as much of a test for him as much as it was for his dad. And of course, his dad was also in need of medical help too. So um, his son had to be the adult here, by navigating the primitive landscapes of this now uninhabitable Earth that humans can no longer live on anymore. And the Earth itself becomes this living organism in which, like, these phantoms appear in the form of, like, Katai's fears projected onto the landscape around him. And so as he has to confront all of these demons that are as a result of his own primitive fears, he merges, like, his animal mind with his higher self. And I feel like climbing the volcano to battle the Ursa was metaphorical for that. Even having to battle against the eagle that was pursuing him while in flight too. This is a really, really special movie. I really, really can't recommend it enough. And again, astrologically speaking, I can see why Will would think of this as the biggest regret of his career. He's a Libra sun and a Scorpio moon. Now, I know I'm going slightly off on a tangent here, but for those who are enlightened enough in astrology, like, think about what that means when looking at Will Smith. Like, he definitely cares so much about what the other thinks of him. That's his Libra sun. But then his Scorpio moon is very, very much about, emotionally bonding with the people that he works with, which means that he also picks up on all of their insecurities, and, whatever shit got thrown at his face, and also at Jaden's face too, because of the reception that this film got. Of course, Will would take it personally, because he wanted to maintain a really, really polished image of himself. But like I say, uh, Will has a hidden genius that I recognize very, very clearly. And I know there has got to be a dedicated elite of people who love After Earth. Shout out again to Jordan, by the way, from Best Buy, because I know him and I talked about this movie as well as iRobot. So I know you love this movie. That's why this review is for you as well as for me. Yeah? But yeah, um, that is the conclusion of this review. So go out, check out After Earth ASAP, and have only nice things to say about it in the comments section. And yeah, this is Integrating Real Perspective. See you on the flip side of the reel, and be prepared for the next surprise in the Will Smith filmography, whatever film I'm going to be reviewing next. Stay tuned. And again, thanks for your support. And once again, also got a shout out here to Mega Media Exchange. Love you guys. Keep on selling, good quality DVDs, Blu-rays, and CDs, well, and video games too. Um, and yeah, in the meantime, I will see you again, once again, on the flip side of the reel. Ciao.